4 month streak, let's go.
All right, hello everybody and welcome to the stream. Hope everybody is doing well tonight. Had a little bit of issues getting the YouTube side to launch, but it finally did cooperate, so that's good. Trashcan, thank you for the 4-month streak. Appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Tammin, good to see you as well. Hope you guys are doing well. Hello, Mickey Maven and Dollcell. Welcome to the stream. And over on the YouTube side, Philippe, hello, welcome. So tonight, we are going to pick up where we left off last night, which was basically getting our scenes up and running with the new transform hierarchy system, or the hierarchy graph, and the transform system. And so to do that, we were basically just kind of putting together some sort of hard-coded config, just to kind of test all of that out. And then from there, we're going to hook that up to our parser and actually load it from this file. So that is kind of where we are at the moment. So let me just actually get back to the right. Let's see, scene loader, I think, is where I was putting all of that in there. So this is where we're going to pick up for tonight. With that in mind, I do want to just take a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, starting with the partners, who are the highest tier of subscription over on YouTube memberships and Patreon. They are Gebi Bashir and Gerbolis Inc. I would also like to thank all the supporters listed under the supporters section. They are the other tiers of subscription, over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. And, of course, I appreciate each and every one of you viewers, whether you're here on the Twitch side or over on the YouTube side. We do simulcast, so I appreciate you guys being here. Welcome to the stream. All right, the A-House and Infamia over on YouTube, hello. Welcome. All right, so if I recall last night, I think there was an issue when we were actually loading up the scene with, I think we had something that just wasn't defined or something along those lines. So it looks like we are doing a scene query based on a line. So this is going to be for the shadow map pass. And it looks like our scene attachment might not be any good. So let's see, we have scene mesh attachments. Okay, so mesh attachment indices is not set up. So that would certainly hamper our progress. So let's take a look at scene. And this is code now that I've written a few weeks ago, so I don't fully have in mind what I did, right? Because we sort of sidebarred to create our sort of custom scripting language. So what did I say that was? That was mesh attachments. So we have that array, but we don't have the mesh attachment indices, I don't think. Okay, so let's just see. Out scene mesh attachment indices. We did not create that. So that's going to be darray create, and I think that's type U32, I want to say. Yes. Okay. So we have that. Let's just see. I think we also have this for... We technically have this for all of this stuff, right? So we have our... well, actually, let me see here. So we have one for each type of thing that we have in here. So we have for skyboxes, we have for terrains, meshes, point lights, directional lights. It looks like we didn't set up attachments for all those things yet. Okay, so the critical ones we're going to need is probably for terrain. in Skybox, is what I'm thinking. All right, so let's see. Let's do outscene terrain attachment indices equals darray creates u32. Right. We'll also do this for skyboxes. So outscene skybox attachment indices equals darray create u32. We may wind up coming up with some sort of structure to hold this stuff so that we don't have all of this stuff sort of separated out this way. But for now, we're just aiming to get it working. All right. Infamia, question for you, actually. Are you from South Africa by any chance? Because I haven't seen the term brew used outside of when I was there last. Just out of curiosity. Let's see. Let's run. Try to load up. Okay. So, would you look at that? Our spawns are loaded. Now, it's not using a transform. We're also using our default sort of cube map texture for our irradiance map. That's why everything looks so red. But we have loaded it, which means our attachment system works, which is awesome. So now we need to figure out why the transform isn't working, right? Because this is huge by default. In fact, it's so huge it's actually clipping, right? So we need to figure that out. Let's see, the unload, I think, also works. Can I load again? Yes, I can. Okay, sweet. So that works. I'm pretty happy with that. Oh, I can't unload here. Let's just kill this here. Let's see. Pamukludon? I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Okay, so I need to take a second and just think about why our transform would not be working. So what we're going to need to do is look at our, let's see, mesh attachment. I guess mesh attachments is what I'm going to want, right? So we have scene raycast. We don't want that. Render data query from line. Render data query. This is probably the one we're going to want to use. Technically, they're all going to wind up using the same data, I think. Okay. You know what? Let's actually close that buffer for a minute. And, okay, so we're getting our scene attachment. Then we're doing our xform handle. And our model is taken from that. Now, if I'm understanding, if I remember this correctly, I think what this does is it returns an identity if it doesn't have it, right? Did we actually hit that scenario? Let's see. Probably gonna have to scroll up quite a bit in the log. And you know what? Let's look in the console log. Okay. So do we have... It's loading up all of our shaders, creating our frame buffers. Okay. It's going to be after this. So here's where we kicked off the load, I believe, because that's where we're queuing all these jobs, right? What was that message? I think it was invalid handle pass to. Let me just search for that. Invalid Okay, interesting. So it doesn't have an invalid handle, which must mean that the xform was created, but not with the configuration that we passed in, is what I'm thinking. Which means either it existed or it didn't exist at all, or we're not pulling it in correctly. So I guess what we should probably do is, let's see, are we doing this in initialize? Or is it load? Scene node initialize. Xform handle, here we go. Okay. So when we're initializing the node, that's when we actually set up the transform. Okay. So we know that we've set that up in config. So what I'm going to do is actually set a breakpoint on line 136 and see where we wind up. So let's load this up. And if node config xform, and we do have one, so our position is almost the center. Our rotation is quaternion identity. That makes sense. And our scale is right. So it looks like the node config is correct. So our next thing to check is to step into this guy and see what this does. So we go ahead and grab the system state, which does exist. We go ahead and we get a handle. So our handle index is 0, and our unique ID is that, right? That's going to be different every time. So handle index is going to be 0. That makes sense. So we go ahead and we set the positions, rotations, scales, all that stuff. Let's see, rotation. Yes. Scale. Yep. Okay. So we set the identity. Oh, I'll bet this is where the issue is. So we know we're creating it, right? But the dirty list. So do we have dirty handles? We do have. We have one. We have none at the moment. So we set that handle as dirty. But how much do you want to bet that we don't actually update this anywhere? So like local dirty handles. Let's see. Sure, allocated. That's not the one I want. And yeah, all we're doing is adding it to the dirty list. And we're not obtaining it, right? So what I'm thinking is when we go later, xform world get, right? All we're doing is returning the cached result, which I think is because we are not actually, I think it's because we're not updating our hierarchy graph. So our hierarchy graph does have an update routine. Let's see. Destroys the old view tree, builds up a new one, traverses the tree to update the transforms. Update tree, view node. I just have to refresh my memory on how all this works. Aha, so we don't even have a dirty check in here at the moment. But we are doing the local get after a calculate. And then we're, yeah, Okay, so this is the entire problem, I think. The hierarchy graph update node, or update, hierarchy graph update is not being called. Okay, I'm pretty confident that's what it is. So, in scene update, let's see, if we're not unloading and the scene is loaded, then the very first thing that we're going to want to do is that pass on the hierarchy node, or hierarchy graph rather. So we'll do hierarchy graph update. We're going to pass the address of scene hierarchy, I think it was called. Yep. And then we're going to pass p-frame data as is. Oh, do we not have that? Yeah, we do. Oh, discards qualifiers. It's const in this case. Is there anything in frame data that we would need to modify? I don't think there is. Delta time, total time, drawn mesh count. Nope. Yeah, this doesn't need updates at the moment. Okay, all right, so let's change our graph update to take this as const, right? Because we don't need to change this, which means that the C file is going to be wrong. So do const there as well. And then that solves that issue. And that's return type void, so there's nothing to check. Okay, so let's try building that. The unobtainium handle. I hear you. Handles actually seem to be working correctly, at least from what I gathered so far. TRS Studio, hello. How's it going? From Lake, that's cool. That works. Sounds good. Appreciate the lurk. Okay, so let's go ahead and debug again. I'm actually going to kill some of these breakpoints. In fact, I think we can kill all of them. All right, so run this, load. Oh, look at that. Our transform works. How about that? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we know that that works, right? So that's cool. Looks like turning off VSync is not affecting it either, so that's good to know. All right, exits. Okay, so that's a really good step because that's verification that we're moving in the right direction. So the next thing that we're gonna do is probably split the view and then go back to the scene loader and toss in something else. So let's see. Let's take, so we have the sponza. Let's add a child to the sponza, right? Because what that'll do is show us that our hierarchy is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the tree model that we have and I'm going to add it to the sponza as a child, which is likely going to throw like the scale and things like that off, but that's fine. Let me open up really quickly the test scene 2. All right, so this is the actual asset that we're going to be using. We have some rubbish in here. We don't need this foo32 here. We can get rid of that. And we can also, we have this start position X. We don't need that. I think that was just a talking point. So essentially what we're going to do is fill out this child, right, which is going to have a name tree in here. So this child node has the name of that. It's going to have a single attachment, right? So we're going to set up an attachment array. The attachment is going to be of type static mesh. Whoops, that should not be quoted. The resource name, I think it's just called tree, I believe. I'll have to look that up. And then we have an xform for that as well, which we're going to put after children. So we'll put it right there. Right. And this doesn't really matter for now, but what I'm really going for here is I want to see that what we're putting in the config over here basically matches what we're hard coding right now. So I'm basically going to just recreate this config over here on this side. I do need to quickly open the simple scene file because I need to copy some stuff out of here. We should probably, you know what, I'm just going to remake this real quick so I don't have to keep opening this and coming back to it. So we have Sponza, we have Falcon, we have Tree. Maybe I should use, yeah, because I actually scaled the tree up, right? The Sponza is scaled really small. So I'm going to have to set this scale to like 200 in order to get it to come out the same. I think that should be fine though. So let's do this for the position. I'll keep this for the position. So we'll do that's our position. Our rotation's just identity, and then our scale is going to be 200, right, to make up for the 100th scale Sponza, right? So if our tree should basically come out fairly normal sized and shouldn't be like huge, right? Because this scale should be relative to this one by the time we're done. The resource name was tree. That's capitalized though. Gotta watch that. Won't matter on Windows, but it will matter on Linux. Okay, so that's that. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to create another node down here for the Falcon, right? Which is that busted car thing, right? So we'll say name equals Falcon, attachments. Actually, I think I can just do this, right? Type is static mesh. Resource name is, I think it was just Falcon as well. Yeah. So that's just the attachment, and then the transform. I'll grab this, but it's actually going to wind up being different. So our Falcon transform is going to be that. So there's our Falcon transform. Okay, so that's that. Now, in terms of lights, this is another thing where we may have to rethink the way that we're doing it, right? because directional light is sort of like on a global node that doesn't really have a transform of its own, but point lights do have transforms. And currently they just have sort of a global position, which is here. And they probably should not be using a global position anymore. They should probably use a transform and extract that position from the transform, is what I'm thinking. All of these other properties are fine. So let's see. I guess we need to get the skybox in here too. Let's get the skybox and the directional light, and then we'll come back for the point lights, because that's going to require some point light refactoring to get that to work correctly. So we'll go ahead and do, let's set this as like the top node, right? So we'll do a node here, and the name of this will be our skybox. And attachments, oops, I want an array, not an object, right? And then inside of that, I want an object, and the type is going to be, oops, put quotes again. The type is going to be equal to skybox. And then I think the only other thing that we need is, yeah, cube.name. name. Skybox. Okay. Right, so let's maybe name this Skybox 01, right? So it has a Skybox attachment, right? Which doesn't actually need a transform. And what I think makes sense is maybe we can actually call this like environment, right? And then we can add new node whose type will be add a new attachment rather, directional light, right? And then that will have some properties, which will be basically all of this. Direction. We do have a comment in there, so I'm actually going to copy the comment over, right? Let's see. All right. So we have this direction, which is going to just be commented out. All right, that's sort of like the old direction. So we have color, direction, shadow distance, shadow fade distance, and shadow split molt. Right? And so we can have nodes that look like this, that contain attachments, right, that render in the world, but don't necessarily need a transform, right? There's no need for the skybox to have a transform. There's no need for the directional light to have a transform. And thus, this node does not have a transform. Which is good. So this was pretty much what I had in mind. I'm not quite ready to throw this file out over here yet, because we do need to think about point lights, and I do want to make some changes to the way that this is configured too, right? Because we want to change to like some properties that make a little bit more sense than constant, linear, and quadratic, right? So we'll tackle that as well. We should probably also, I guess, let's go ahead and get the terrain in there as well. We're going to have ads here in a second. So I guess we have Sponza there. We have Falcon down here. So I'm actually just going to take a copy of this. And I'm going to paste down here. And I just realized that this is behind my head, so you guys probably can't see. So here we're going to name this terrain, right? The type is going to be terrain, and then the resource name is going to be test terrain. And then the transform we actually do have one defined over here, so we're going to use that. There we go. And we have ads. It's a couple seconds late on that. So just so you guys are aware, especially over on the YouTube side, once every half an hour, we are served about 90 seconds or up to 90 seconds of ads on Twitch. So I like to pause the stream across the board so that nobody misses any content while that's going on, and then we resume. I usually have a timer up on the screen so you guys know how long it's going to be before we get back. And then I also suggest that you guys hydrate during that, right? Because it's important to remain hydrated. All right. Almost done with ads. We got about 30 seconds left. Siggy over on YouTube, hello. Welcome. How are you? From Lake, that's awesome. Glad to hear it. Dexter46, hey, amazing work, bro. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you for being here and following along. I appreciate that. Okay, so we just got a couple seconds here. All right, ads are dead. So yeah, the fluff. Basically, the way that Twitch ads work is they are dependent on your platform and your region/locale. So there's ad slots that can either be filled or not filled. So that's the reason I say it's up to 90 seconds of ads, right? So I know some folks don't get ads because of where they are in the world or what platform they're on. Some people only get like 30 seconds of ads. Some people get the full 90 seconds. Some people only get a banner, right? It varies widely, but I try to cover all the bases. So you might not get ads just because there was nothing to fill that slot. And that's basically what's happening there. All right. Do I read YouTube chat? Yes, I do. I read both. Sometimes it takes me a few minutes if I'm focused coding, but yes, I do read both. All right. Okay, so we have our terrain in here as well. I'm pretty satisfied with that. So let's switch back to, let's see, what's the next thing that we're going to add? I guess the skybox, right? Scene. Or I guess we're going to test out the tree. That's right. We want the scene loader. We'll do the tree next as a child of this, and then we'll go ahead and set up the skybox. Okay. So essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to mimic this configuration, right? Because we don't have this hooked up. We want to test those pieces separately. So before we push Sponza into the nodes, we're going to say tree, a child of Sponza. So scene node config, we're going to say tree. And this is just a test tree mesh that we have. Tree.name equals surprise tree. And then we'll do, let's see, tree.xform equals kallocate size of xform system, whoops, xform, wait a minute, xform system config. That doesn't seem right. So memory tag scene. Yeah, that's not right. Okay, I thought so. This should be xform Do we not have? I thought we had a configuration for that. Was it transform config? What the heck was the type? Scene xform config. That's what it was. Scene xform config. This is wrong. Change that one. Okay. I was going to say, that doesn't seem right. So, I'm actually just going to copy this real quick. And I'm going to copy this too, actually. We'll just update it. So, tree. All right. Tree. Let's see. How do you write a trading and matching engine of my own? How complex is it? Can you break it down into steps? What do you mean by trading and matching? Do you mean like for a card game, or I'm not sure what you mean by that. You have to define that a little bit more. Someone tied our entire game working and loading to a single fade tween hidden on a hidden UI element. Playing to completion. I'm sad. That sounds painful. Yeah. Hey, it's been a long time since I watched your last stream. Abhishek, welcome. Good to see you. Hector, hi, I'm in episode 14 of this series and wanted to ask what is the difference between using GLFW instead of calling Windows create window. So GLFW encapsulates a lot of things for you. It handles all the window calling code. It handles input, things like that. Whereas we're doing it sort of the manual hard way. The difference being, though, is GLFW might give you things that you might not use. So you're having to include like a whole library of things you potentially might not use. That being said, it is still a pretty good library. It's widely used. I've used it before. It's a pretty decent way to go if you don't want to write all the platform code yourself. Stock trading, like coding a order book matching engine for stock exchange. So I don't know enough about that, honestly, to be able to advise you on how to write that, to be completely honest. It sounds more like a data problem than a game engine problem, right? Writing a renderer for anything is basically the same. But as far as like the actual model that you would need to do that, like I couldn't speak to that, to be honest. I don't have experience in that area. I think you have problems because you do documentation. Yeah, I mean, possibly. If I use GLFW3, can I port the game to every platform like you can? I think it does support Windows, Linux, and Mac, I want to say. So in theory, yes. The reason I did it manually here is it was a learning exercise, right? Just to show you how all that stuff is done and how different the various platforms are. That was the primary purpose. But also, I want to make it as lean and mean as possible. But in theory, yeah, you could definitely do it with GLFW as far as I'm aware. First time chat, Nitro Flap, welcome. Just tuning in. Glad to see more people doing C Game Engine Dev. Awesome. Yeah, I prefer it, honestly. GLFW, what about Mesa? Good question. Good question indeed. Let's see. I don't think I missed any more chats. Okay. Mesa has OS Mesa, which lets you run it on any OS. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I haven't used that, so that's a good question. Okay. So we have tree attachments. This is going to be tree mesh attachment. We'll do tree mesh attachment. And then we have typed mesh attachment, which I guess is going to be typed tree mesh attachment. Typed tree mesh attachment. Resource name is going to be tree, and then tree mesh attachment. We push that to tree attachments. Okay. So, so we have that. Now what we need to do is, do we have a child array created? No. So we'll say create children. And mind you, we're only going through this, again, for those of you who are just tuning in, we're only doing this manually because we want to test the actual scene hierarchy stuff without wondering if it's our parser with this getting in the way, right? So we want to test those things separately, which is the reason I'm doing this. The other thing is when we go to write our serialization/deserialization code, we'll be able to pluck this right out of here and use it for the various object types. So there's sort of a dual purpose here. So we have sponza children equals darray create, and the type is going to be scene node config, right? So these are just nested, right? The tree is a child of the sponza, so we're going to say darray push sponza children, and then tree, right? So we push the tree to the sponza's children array, and then push the sponza to the resource data nodes array. The only other thing that we need to do is we need to modify the scale like we said we were going to. So we're just going to set that to 200, right? Because the sponza itself is really small, so we need to compensate for that. And the tree was set to a scale of 2 when it was unparented. So this is essentially to undo the 100th scale that we have in the sponza. Let's see. The tree itself has this transform here. So that's going to be position is going to be 7.4. And then 0.8. And then 14.0. Orshi, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome. And then rotation, we're just going to leave as is, right? We have the identity there. So I think I've done everything that we need to do there. Let's go ahead and build this. And we will start this up. Right, and load. Interesting. So, why are we hung up? Configuration for material polysurface SG1 contains a map named null, which will be ignored for PBR material types. Interesting. So it seems like, is our asset foobar? Maybe. Yeah, it's not loading like super small either. And I don't see it. Actually, I don't see the sponza either, which is a little bit weird. Contains a map named null. Let me see what is in. Let me see what is in the materials. Let's see. Polysurface. SG1. Name is null. It's not kidding. Interesting. I wonder why that caused it to fail, though. That's a little bit strange. I could have swore we actually had that issue before, because this asset hasn't changed. It looks like a specular map. In fact, I'm fairly sure that's what it is. We do have diffuse color in here twice. That's a little bit strange too. All right, let's nuke that. These aren't really used anyways. Let's call this... Contains a map name null. Yeah, so I think let's call this, I guess this doesn't really matter, right? Because we don't have specular, we have like combined. I'm going to ignore that for now. Let me try running again. I'm not actually thinking that that's the problem, believe it or not. Because it says it's loaded the texture. I wonder what handles we're getting for those. Let's do... Let's take a look at initialize. And we'll put a debug. Let's see, C node initialize is actually what we want. Let's put a breakpoint right here. Because I'm wondering if that is kind of what is messing things up. So here is the application. NitroFlap, thank you for the follow, appreciate it. Is my engine open source? Yes. So I'll drop a link here in chat. So if you go to kohiengine.com, I'll just drag this over here so we can have a quick look at it. This contains sort of everything, all the information about the project. So it started as a YouTube series. Now we live stream it. We have a GitHub link down here. We have a Discord link where I think we're approaching like 900 people on that. But if we go here to the GitHub, you'll see all of the source is available here. It is Apache 2.0 licensed, which means that the only thing that I ask if you use the code is to just say you used code from it. That's it. There'll never be any sort of royalty fees or licensing fees of any kind. It's always going to be 100% free, not paywalled in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, it's free and open source, cross-platform. It's available there for you. Cool. All right. So I'm going to load a scene here. And we're going to load the first handle. So our states, let's see. Handle creates. Okay, so that's handle 0. So that's fine. We verified that that works the first time through. So I'm actually going to skip this and hit the second node. And so our node config here is for the tree. So let's see. Looks like we do have a valid position, rotation, and scale. So at least at that point, it's correct. Let's see. So let's go ahead and see what handle it gives us. All right. So let's see, allocated, we have 128, enough for 128 handles anyway. Okay. So it looks like the index 1 is going to be our handle. So, yep, handle index of 1. So it's not a handle issue. We have our position, our rotation, our scale. So it's not that. We go ahead and add that to the dirty list so that it gets recalculated on the next frame. Not that that's actually doing anything right now, but eventually it will. Okay. So now we add the node handle. So we should probably make sure that the hierarchy graph is actually adding a handle correctly. So this is pretty much going to be the same thing. Nodes allocated. So what does node handles look like on this? Okay, so it's not invalid on the first one. Okay, so we're going to allocate a new one. So we're going to ensure allocated, nodes allocated, that should be times 2. Just make sure of that. So our new node count is going to be 2. If nodes allocated is less than that, we should realloc. Looks like we are doing that. We are copying the memory to new node handles, which is, yeah, zeroed out, right? So after we do that, we should see our unique ID here. Okay, that's correct. Then we free the old node handles. So that looks correct. And then we change over the array. It looks correct to me. The only other thing is nodes allocated. Do we actually step that up? Equals new node count. Okay. So we do this all the way down. Okay. So levels, parent index is 0, right? So, oh, interesting. Wait a minute now. So if the parent index is invalid ID, oh, then the level is 0. Otherwise, the level will be levels parent index, which the parent index is 0. That's at level 0, so we should get a 1 there. New index. I'm going to have to do this. Yeah, 1. Okay. Parent indices, dirty flags, xform handles, return graph node handles. So we should have unique IDs, handle indices. That all looks correct. Okay. So it's not that. Node config attachments. We do have a static mesh. Typed attachment. Oh, why is the attachment type unknown? That doesn't make any sense. That's the issue. Most likely. Because as it's going through the attachment types, it's saying, is this a mesh? Is this a light? Like, how do we treat this thing? So we have a resource name, which is tree. We do the mesh create. That works. We initialize the mesh. Again, that works. So new mesh. Is initialized anyway. So let's see, scene attachment, mesh attachment, scene attachment acquire. So that's basically, I'm gonna have to step to down here. It's interesting that it worked for the first one, but not the second one. So our mesh attachment is a type static mesh. We have the hierarchy node handle. We have the resource handle. Why are we reassigning the resource handle? K handle create. Maybe that's where we're going wrong. Mesh attachment, attachment type. All right, Nitro. Have a good one. All right, let's see. Boy, lots of chat over on the YouTube side tonight. Oh, you were wondering why I was using this to debug with? Yeah, because I just haven't switched away from it yet. Doesn't GDB work on both? Yeah, I mean, GDB is cross-platform, right? But I don't necessarily want to use raw GDB to debug. I don't have time for that. You're only Linux these days. You haven't been on Mac or Windows in a long time. Yeah, so I actually have my Linux setup almost completely ready to go. I had to blow it away because of some pretty massive issues I was having with my install. Just a few more things I have to work out, and I'll be switching back to it. Yeah, I like to distro hop. Yep, exactly. You're a Nix guy? I haven't tried Nix yet. NVIDIA is still a pain. Trust me, if you have the advantage of when you want to update, you keep your old config. If the upgrade breaks, you can roll back. So normally that's been the case for me, but yeah, didn't work for me last time. Advised to mess around on the VM first. Yeah, before installing something like Arch. Absolutely. Yeah, I used Arch for a couple years, actually. I did that the hard way. I don't recommend that if you're not an experienced Linux user, rather. All right. So, why are we... When we do scene attachment require, how did we already get a key handle is invalid? How did we already get a handle for this? Because this looks like a valid handle to me. Mesh attachment. How did we get... So we have node handle here. That's for the hierarchy. Oh, we have ads. Nitro Flap, I just saw the stretch redeem. Thank you for that. You used CentOS and Ubuntu on and off for years and took the plunge into Arch. It's great. Yeah, I loved Arch. Aside from every once in a while you would update and just things break horribly and you can't boot. That sucked, but it was a little bit more of an exception than a norm. But yeah, it did happen to me, and ultimately it was like just too unstable to use as my streaming system. The problem with doing game dev on a rolling release distro is it's a bit like Russian roulette. Like your dev environment has to be pretty stable. Did I get NVIDIA working? Yeah. So this time I'm trying Pop! OS only because I've heard lots of things about it, and I've never actually tried it. So I'm trying that this time around. Not sure if I'm going to like it or not. I'm usually not a fan of the GNOME desktop, but I'm going to try it. You know, I can always throw KDE at it if I need to. But I'm going to try it, see how it works. Supposedly, it works really well with NVIDIA, and from what I've seen, that seems to be true so far. That's why Nix is great. You get the option to roll back if an update breaks something. That's good. Have I looked at Nix? No, I haven't. That's on the list of ones I want to try, though. But yeah, as far as unconventional goes, you know, I have to wonder like how hard it is to get some of the software I would need. All right, are we almost done? I think we're done with ads. Yeah, we are. Okay. All right. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the load and actually go to the query, and I'm going to do render data query. And I just want to see what these have in them. So let's go ahead and just skip to that. So mesh count, we only have one for our mesh count. Is that because maybe one isn't loaded? Let me undo this and continue and break again. Nope, it's only one. Okay, so scene meshes. What? Oh, it's just the name that's null. Okay. Wait, why is that index 0 though? That definitely should, that's not the first mesh we loaded. That should be at index 1, not index 2. Geometry count is 2. That also doesn't seem right. Oh wait, no, actually that is right because it uses 2 different materials. Yes, that is correct. Okay, so for some reason, let's do this. Let's switch back to this. Let's unload the scene. Let's load the scene again. I'm going to skip past this. And did I not set up my breakpoint back on? I didn't set my breakpoint back. I should have disabled it, not killed it. Mesh render query data. All right, let's do this. and then disable. Continue, unload, load. We'll skip this one, skip this one. Did I put my... I did it again. Unload. Load. Now set the breakpoint. Continue, continue. All right, so the mesh count here is 1. The first mesh here is tree again already. Okay, so it's definitely like during the initialization phase. All right. So let's try and figure out why that is. So if we have type static mesh, new mesh config, we create the new mesh. Oh. I see the issue. Okay. So what's happening here, and actually I think I can even prove this. So our node config here, so this is when the tree comes in, right? We take a look at S meshes, right? The state is still undefined because the mesh isn't actually loaded yet. So we really need to, as soon as we do mesh initialize, we probably need to flip that state to like an initialized state as opposed to undefined, right? So mesh create and mesh initialize are probably not flipping that state correctly, and I think that's where the bug is. So if we go to mesh.c and we do, I guess, mesh create, right? We have out mesh state equals mesh state created, right? We weren't doing that, and we definitely should have been. So before we even return out of here, just calling create in the mesh changes its state, so it'll keep that from overwriting itself. Initialize, again, we will say out mesh state. I forgot that we added this state stuff. Oh, it's m state rather. M state equals mesh state initialized, right? And then in here, oh, we didn't do it here either. Okay, so in load, we'll do m state equals mesh state loading, and then after it's finished loading, let's see, load from resource. So there's two different paths we can go here. So we have loading, which comes from a resource, which is going to need to handle that differently because that kicks off a job. Or we have geometry acquire from config, which I think also uploads it to the GPU. Geometry system. From config. create geometry, I think this kicks off a upload to the GPU. It does. Okay, but that doesn't actually look like this is jobified. I thought it was, but apparently not. Okay, so in this case, in this case, we can do it right here. We'll say mesh.state equals mesh state loaded. Right? And then load from resource. So this here is if we have like a code-driven mesh that we want to load. Like we've coded up a cube or something, and we're providing manual configuration to it. So that's that path versus loading it from a resource, which I believe is jobified. Yes. So on the job success, when this is finished, this is actually where we want to switch up the state. So mesh params out mesh state equals mesh state loaded. All right, and then finally we have mesh load, and then we should have mesh unload, which before we actually even unload any of this, we're going to flag it right away. So we're going to say m.state equals mesh state, and then we're going to basically go back to undefined, right? Let's see. Oh, actually, we can't do that there. We've got to do it after we zero the memory. Okay. Thinking that will solve the issue. So let's go ahead and run. And I'm actually going to disable these breakpoints for a minute. Okay. So this is a little bit different. Mesh count is 2, so it did fix that issue. Let's see, where are we? We are on the second one. So we have the attachment. Oh, interesting. Mesh attachment indices for I. Let's see what this is. Let's see what this attachment index is. Well, that's definitely not right. No wonder it's throwing an error. Okay, so where did we go wrong with our mesh attachment indices? So let's see. We create the array. Oh, we're not actually setting it anywhere. That's neat. We're not actually updating anything in that array. So if we do, I don't know, 10, yeah, it's just junk. We're not actually pushing anything to that. So let me think. So our mesh attachment indices. Whenever we create a new and save off a new mesh attachment, I'm trying to think how this should work. Should we be using sub I? Yeah, whenever we push to scene meshes, we should also be pushing to mesh attachment indices. Okay. Scene meshes. So this is the query. That's a query. That's where we set up the initial array. Mesh load. Okay, this is all about loading. Okay, I don't need any of that. This is queries again. Okay. So I think what I need to do is have a look at scene C. I think it only worked on the first mesh because it happened to be zeroed out memory. So what we need to do is we need to take a look at scene node initialize. When we are dealing with a attachment, so we have new mesh initialize. Okay, here is where we're actually setting the meshes. So this is also where we should be setting the attachment index. So is it literally mesh attachment indices I, and then is it the handle that we're looking for? Think about this for a second. Attachment, actually we want typed attachment. No, we don't want that. Where do we push into the attachment? Scene attachment acquire. This is, I think, what we need to use. Mesh attachment. Let me see something. So mesh attachment, resource handle. Handle index. So I think we need to do S mesh attachment indices sub index equals that handle index. Not 100% sure that's right. All right. Apotham, good to see you. How's it going? Super, how's it going? Good to see you. Yes, I am aware of that series. Very much so. Feel like we've been seeing the exception has occurred too much for my liking. Yeah, I mean, the thing is we have like, oh, you know what? I didn't kill the application here. The thing is we had about 4 or 5 sections of code that we touched and haven't exercised any of it. So we got through some of that last night. We actually did have a scene loading earlier, but it was because we were lucky with our indices because it was dealing with zeroed out memory. So we're just trying to sort of step our way through this and get it working. There we go, I think. Okay, so our Sponza works again. But where's our tree? Where the heck is our tree? Interesting. I don't see our tree. So the weird coloration and stuff is expected behavior because we're using the default cube map as our irradiance map because we don't have a skylight or a skybox loaded at the moment. We'll come up with a better default for that at some point. But that's the reason you're seeing this sort of reddish tint to everything, because the default cube map is a checkerboard pattern, which you can actually see pretty clearly here. Where the heck is the tree? So did the tree not get loaded? These are all Sponza textures. Or did the tree get loaded like further up? Shouldn't have. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's, I think that's it right there. Oops. Tree. What was the name of it again? Polysurface. Here we go. Okay, so, texture name is db2. So does console log have? Yeah, there it is right there. Okay, it is loading. So it's loaded, so why can't we see it? That's very bizarre. Right, because it should be like right about here. Now we did set it as a child, so I'm wondering if maybe like that got messed up somehow. So I guess let's debug into our query, right? We'll do render data query breakpoint. So we have 2 meshes. Oh. Okay, well, I see the problem. So our mesh attachment indices are indeed wrong. Put 0 in there twice. This should be... Can I edit this? Set value. That should be at 1. Yeah, and it completely pooped itself because it's not lined up correctly. Okay. So think. Where would that have gone wrong? Let's see. Rewatching the Kohi series on YouTube, and man, that video and audio quality improved by a lot. Yeah. I've switched equipment a couple of times since I started that series, actually. All thanks to you guys, actually, because I was able to get that equipment thanks to, folks supporting the channel. So I appreciate that. The videos were already good, but the audio is so much cleaner now. I appreciate that. Yeah, I switched to an XLR setup, and it's a lot nicer, I think. Quick question: when you are designing a software, do you use some tool to help organize the ideas, sketch diagrams, or do you use the good old paper and pencil? Combination, right? So it depends on what I'm doing. One thing that I have learned that isn't really all that useful for me is like UML diagrams. And I know that's probably going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, but yeah, usually when I'm kind of planning stuff out, I'll just sort of pencil and paper it, or maybe spec something out, and even just a simple markdown file. Sometimes I'll do that. So like I actually have another project that I sort of alluded to last night that I'm actually specking out or some stuff for, to do. So like I'll just kind of come up with a list of stuff, right? And then like high level design, main components, that I'll just kind of text it all out, right? And then this will be accompanied by visual stuff if I need it. But yes, in case you're wondering, this is something else I'm planning on the side, which is an application called Notepad --. Kind of started as a joke, but I'm writing my own editor. Magetz, hello, welcome. I hope you're doing well. Psycode, welcome. Good to see you. Did we fix the attachment issues from yesterday? Yes. So, what we're actually dealing with now is something a little bit different. And it has to do with the way that our handles are working. We've basically got some invalid data, and our indexing is wrong somewhere. So I'm basically just kind of working my way through that, more or less. Notepad --, the official IDE for Kaysen. Yeah. Yeah, basically, I'll quickly talk about this because I don't really want to detract too much, but I really like NeoVim a lot, but the config for it is, to get it the way that I want it, is kind of insane, right? It's almost 800 lines. And actually, this isn't even the most up-to-date version of it, right? So what I'm doing is I'm actually kind of rolling my own editor that's going to be set up basically the way that I have this set up, with some configurable options. That's going to be GPU powered. And I'm going to use that at some point and switch to that to develop with instead of this. And I'm going to see if I can build a debugger straight into it. We'll see how that goes. But that's the idea. Okay. So this did not give me what I needed. Oh, maybe because I'm doing this in the wrong spot. What a dingus. All right, let me put this down here at the end. I wonder if that's it, actually. So you build your own game using your own engine written on your own editor, essentially. I had thoughts about using Kohi to make the editor, but Kohi's a little bit heavy for just an editor. Also considered writing my own editor, but never committed to the idea. Yeah, I get that. Perhaps I will one day. Yeah, it kind of, like I said, it kind of started off as a joke, but the more I got thinking about it, I'm like, damn, that would actually be really nice. Because there's been lots of times I go to update this and stuff breaks, which is not optimal, right? But it's like, if I have an editor that is the way that I want it without having to do plugins, it's a win-win, right? We'll see. We'll see how far it goes. The editor should be called Code, spelled Khode. That's a little bit too similar to Chode. I think. So I don't know about that one. I know where your mind's at, but my mind went somewhere else completely. You got a nice coda. Got a nice code. Yeah, exactly. Want to make my own text editor as well as my own terminal emulator. See, I thought about making a terminal emulator, and then the more I looked into it, the more I got grossed out by it, and I'm just like, no. WesTerm actually does everything I want it to do, so I think I'm going to stick with WesTerm for a while. We have ads. So for those of you who are new to the channel or over on the YouTube side, we do pause the stream when we're served ads on the Twitch side, which is once every 30 minutes for 90 seconds or up to 90 seconds. So I know it's a little bit different over here on the YouTube side in terms of how ads work, but I like to keep the playing field even and level. So I just pause across the board, right? I put a timer up there so you guys know how long it's going to be, and also I take this opportunity to hydrate as well. The package ecosystem on Nix is bigger than AOR. It's pretty decent size then. Can't argue with that. Oh, Super Gem. I think you asked that question over here on the Twitch side, and I answered that, I believe. Sorry, sometimes I get like focused on coding and troubleshooting, and I lose track of chat on both sides sometimes. I try to keep up with it, but I can't always. All right, so ads are dead. Cody. Kohdi? K-O-H-D-I. Cody. It sounds like Cody, like somebody's name almost. Yeah, I don't know. I thought Notepad plus or Notepad minus minus is funny because there's Notepad plus plus, right? But then you have minus minus on Notepad, which then becomes an integer underflow and becomes the maximum int allowed, which means that it's an awesome editor, right? It's kind of the programmer humor there, humor in quotes. That was the joke, anyways. Minus minus Notepad. Ooh, that's actually really funny. If I wasn't concerned about people like figuring that out to actually search it, realistically, I'm probably not gonna like keep it named Notepad minus minus. I probably am gonna have to change it to something that's more easily searched, but I don't know. Notepad plus plus did it, right? So, yeah, dash dash is a comment in Lua. Yep, that's true. And it's also used in like command line too, so that might get weird in installing packages because it thinks it's like a command line option. That would actually be a funny troll. But is Notepad an unsigned integer equals 0? I'm going to say it's an unsigned integer. That's what I'm saying. Notepad is an unsigned integer 0. And so by doing Notepad minus minus, we wind up at max int. Can't outdo it. Notepad is signed. I call rubbish. I say Notepad is unsigned. I just committed an undefined behavior. That's awesome. Ooh, flip the bits on negative Notepad. There you go. Paint is signed. Notepad is unsigned. Why is Paint signed? Max over on YouTube. Hello. Welcome. Good to see you. All right. Did I build this? I forget. I must have. All right. Let's try running it and see what we get. All right, load. Okay, well, I saw it start to load in there, right? We saw that. What is xform world get? So world matrices. Handle index is a massive number, so that's probably rubbish then. Okay. So the xform handle, yeah, that's crap. Why is scene hierarchy xform handles? Attachment hierarchy node handle. Wow. Okay. So we must not be setting up the hierarchy xform handles correctly then. Yeah, this is all just completely wrong. So scene mesh attachment indices is actually correct. That's what I would expect. 0 and then 1. But then mesh attachments, sub 1. Let's do this. Mesh attachments are just wrong. Interesting indeed. So I guess what we're going to have to do is walk through the initialization code for each and every single one to try and figure out what the issue is. Really didn't want to do that, but I think that's kind of what we're stuck with. So we'll do scene node initialize. And we will restart. If you flip bits and negate, you wind up with an incremented integer. Yeah. So you essentially wind up with Notepad++. Which might be a really hilarious Easter egg on Windows. Where like if you enter certain text into the editor and press a key combination or something like that, it launches Notepad++ if you have it installed. That might actually be really funny. Error success Notepad. You went max Notepad, yeah. Just name the editors the coffee emote. Try and search that. Take that, search engine. Too funny. All right, so we have this here. I'm going to do... I think it's fine to debug at the node level. So I'm going to reactivate this guy. And load. So we basically need to verify two things. We need to verify that we're getting a proper xform handle and a proper node handle. And then for those things, we basically need to say, okay, well now we have a static mesh that we need to set up as an attachment and then sort of walk through this and figure out exactly how this is working, because I suspect that there's just something in here that I've forgotten to do or that I've done incorrectly or as a copy pasta or something like that. So we do have configuration for this. So we have xform from position rotation scale. I know on the first time through this was actually successful. So if we take a look for this, we have handle index 0 with a unique ID. So that I'm pretty confident is correct. Hierarchy graph child add with xform. So the parent handle for this is invalid ID, right? We could see that there. So we should actually get a node handle successfully on this one too. So this is the first thing that we've entered into the hierarchy. So it has a handle index of 0. So that makes sense as well. So the first set of this is the attachments. So we have an attachment count here, which is just 1, right? So this is the, just to confirm, this should be the sponsa. Yep, it is. Okay. We go ahead and we get just a convenience pointer to the attachment, grab the attachment type, which is static mesh. We bump down to that. We get the typed attachment by doing a cold cast on attachment, which is deeply hilarious, by the way, naming. Okay, so this typed attachment, oh, that might still be a problem, actually. So let me think about this for a second. So typed attachment has an attachment type unknown. We really don't need the attachment type listed twice. Really, all we need is the resource name. So maybe we should get rid of that second attachment type because that's kind of confusing. So let's take a look real quick. I'm going to stop this actually because let's go ahead and just fix that, right? I was considering leaving it alone, but I don't think I'm going to. Okay, so we have typed attachment is this guy. So let's go to definition on that. So a lot of these attachments are pretty similar, right? I'm just going to delete the scene node attachment type out of that because when we attach this to the node, it has that already. So if we take a look at the scene node config, it has a scene node attachment config. And if we go to that, right, that is just, oops, I don't want to delete it off of this one. So this sort of generic node config, or node attachment config, is the only thing that has the attachment type. And then you cast this actual attachment to that. I know I technically didn't have to stop the application to do that. I could have just not built it yet, but I wanted to get that out of the way. And actually, this attachment is kind of annoying too. We have, this should probably be attachment data. Right. So that's attachment data. I think that makes more sense. Attachmentception, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because after you brought that up, I couldn't unsee it. All right. So we've got that. Let's debugalize. Why did it put a... Okay. All right. Load. Okay. So we know that this was fine until like here. So let me just skip ahead to that. All right. So our typed attachment now just has a resource name. So we set up a mesh config based off of that resource name. We take a copy of the string, and then we start to set up a new mesh. So we do mesh create. We destroy the new mesh config. We no longer need that after create is called, so we can go ahead and nuke that. We can initialize the new mesh, so we don't have to do anything with like resource handles or anything yet in there. And then once we do that, then we actually loop through our meshes array. Right, so we have, let me get rid of some of these things actually. And I'm going to do scene meshes, and I'm just going to set it to 2. What is it? Oh, it's S in this case. Right, so we can just keep an eye on that. Oh, that's interesting though. Is that not... That's not completely zeroed memory. Why? What's written to that so far? Shouldn't have been anything. Wait a minute. So our... How many do we have here? We have 0. Okay, so what we're doing here is we are looking to see if there's one that's been freed up. Okay, and so that's obviously not going to be the case the first time around. The index is invalid ID, so then we go ahead and we push to new mesh, or push meshes, new mesh to meshes rather. So we have a sponza, mesh state created, which is a little weird because we initialized it, but okay. But why is this second one? Why does this second thing have rubbish in it? Oh, because it's not, yeah, because it's not actually been allocated to hold that many. Okay, that actually does make sense. We're previewing memory that doesn't belong to that yet. That actually does make sense. Okay. So we say index equals count. So the count in this case would be 0. The index would also be 0 because it's the first one put into that array. That makes sense. Okay. So the mesh attachment. So we have the D-array length, in this case, is 0. So we skip the loop to see if there's any that are free. We don't have any more space. We push a new one, new attachment, and then we return a pointer to that. Right, so that's completely zeroed out. And then we say the mesh attachment resource handle is khandle create using the index, right? Which in this case is 0. So if we go here, the handle index becomes 0, right? We create that handle using the handle index. So that makes sense. The attachment type for the mesh attachment is static mesh. The hierarchy node handle is the node handle that we retrieved earlier. here. Okay. So far, this makes sense, right? Because we're not actually using... We should probably denote this somehow that this is attachment configuration, not the actual attachment. Okay, so we have a resource handle. The handle index then would be 0. So the mesh attachment indices. Mesh attachment indices. This is the only one that I'm not sure about, because I think... I think doing it this way is actually incorrect, because it makes sense to have the queries that way, but like this is a D array, and I don't see anywhere in here where we're actually pushing to that. So how do we manage that? That's the problem. Because we're working essentially with uninitialized memory there. So at this point, we essentially would have to do, if we pushed into meshes here, we would also have to push into mesh attachment indices. Which we could push anything there, I guess. Right, and then just update it later. I think that's the problem. So here we're setting it, right? But we're technically setting a invalid value. We should probably do darray push s mesh attachment indices, and we'll just push index there, which I think is going to be the same thing ultimately. Oops, this actually belongs down here. So we push in both cases here, and then in both cases here, we set. Because this mesh attachment index needs to match where it is in the meshes array. So if we follow the same order of operations here or here, we should be good. And I don't think we actually have to do this as a result. Would it be bad for the node to own its transform? I mean, it kind of does, right? But nodes don't have to have a transform as a requirement. So that was one of the things about this system, is that we can have nodes that don't have transforms. So like this top node here, this environment node, has attachments, right? It has a skybox attachment and a directional light attachment. Neither of these things need transforms. And so the actual node itself does not have a transform. And so if we look a little bit further down, like this node has a transform. And then this child node has a transform. But technically speaking, you could have nested nodes that don't have transforms and stuff, right? So yeah, I hope that kind of makes sense. Kimberly Williams, good morning to you too, depending on where you are. Welcome. Who inspired you to do deep programming like you are? A bunch of people, really. Probably the number one inspiration would be John Carmack, honestly. Just looking at the stuff that he's written over the years. Awesome stuff. Did I build this? I think I did. Yeah, it looks like I did. All right, let's run this. And I'm actually just going to disable these breakpoints for the time being. Just because I want to quickly see if it actually just loads or it poops itself again. Okay, it pooped itself. So that wasn't the entire fix, apparently. All right, so load. This one I'm pretty confident in, so we'll go down to our second breakpoint here. And in fact, I'm gonna nuke that one and come down here instead, past the mesh create, down here to where we actually do the indexing, right here. All right, so the first time through, we shouldn't have a count, right? That makes sense. So we do darray push on meshes. So we push the mesh, and then we also push the index to the attachment, mesh attachment indices. Right, so that would be the index into the meshes array. And then we say index equals count, which, oh, wait a minute. No wonder that's freaking wrong. Hold on. This technically, wait a minute. So technically you could go all the way to the top, but I think putting it here is good enough. That index needs to be updated before we use it. Otherwise, I'm just inserting invalid ID and then using that. No wonder it's pooping itself. All right, so let's get rid of this. We'll just try this again. Dang it. All right, so let's see. Render data query again. Okay, so we'll turn these back on. Restart. Go a little bit deeper in. All right, so index is invalid ID, so we push the new mesh, set the index to count, which would be 0 in this case. Then we push that to the mesh attachment indices, which is there, technically unchanged, but that's fine. All right, so scene attachment. So this is where we actually assign or acquire the attachment, which I think just pulls out of the array. I don't think this does anything with handles other than validation, right? So we just push a new attachment there, return the address of it. That's fine. So we get a pointer to that guy. So the resource handle we create based off the index, which is going to be 0. Yep, handle index of 0. Set the attachment type. Set the hierarchy node handle. Okay. So that is good. Now we have node config children. So in theory, we should do child count should be 1. Scene node initialize, right? We just recurse down to that child. So if we take a look at that node config, that should be tree, and it is, right? So we know our inheritance or our hierarchy model is working. And this has no children of its own. So in this case, we need an xform handle again. So we do handle create. We have a single xform in here at the moment. So we should skip the first, but set on the second, right? Okay, so we return the handle. handle index is 1. Wait a minute, though. We have ads. So I'm just going to think about this for a second while ads are running. PR Zemkov, hello. How's it going? Good to see you. We are in the midst of doing some pretty low-level debugging here. Thank you for the hydrate redeem, Taman. I think I see part of the problem. Ads are almost done. All right. Ads are dead. We are back. Okay. So when we do ensure allocated at this point, because we have essentially added I'm really wondering if we should just like use a DRA for this. What I'm thinking is, so for our handle here, we either use one that we've found. If we find an empty entry, we create the handle based off of that index, right? Which is fine. Problem here is, when we call create handle, at this point, we're passing the xform count, which is 128. Because the xform count is based off of state allocated, which is 128 at the moment. Not what we want. So this is going to be a bug for sure. I'm going to just put a fix me here for now. Actually, no. Because if we actually hit this section here, then no, that's correct. It's not a bug. Never mind. All right. So we did get a handle index of 1. So that is what we did expect. So we set the position, scales, matrices, all that stuff, added to the dirty list. Cool. So we have an xform handle. That looks good. The node handle, we this time have a parent handle with a handle index of 0 instead of invalid, right? So we're not dealing with an invalid handle ID. So we need to node acquire. So nodes allocated is 1. It's not an invalid handle, so we skip that. New index, ensure allocated, right? So new index is going to be 1. We create a new handle based off of that, which is going to give us 1, right? So it's basically the same thing as the other system. So we acquire a new node. That looks correct. Now we take a look at the attachments for this guy, and this is where I think we're going wrong. So our attachment count in this case is 1. Grab a convenience pointer to that. The attachment is a static mesh. We cold cast that here to a typed attachment. Interesting. Oh wait, it's because I hadn't executed it. Okay, so resource name is tree. Okay, we set up our mesh config, take a copy of that string, create the mesh. Why is that window so tiny? Why are you doing this? Okay, fine. There it goes. It expanded. Okay. Okay, so mesh created. Okay, so it's in the right state. We free the configuration. We initialize the mesh. That's fine. Now, we take a look at the scene meshes array, which at this point only has a single mesh in it. Yes. Okay, so we loop through those, checking to see if there's any empty slots, which is basically a undefined mesh. We do not have any of those. So our index is still invalid ID. We push the new mesh into the meshes array. The index is then set to count, which is 1. So that is correct. We push that into the mesh attachment indices. So that's right there. So that is correct. The mesh attachment, scene attachment require. So we have the attachment count, which in this case is just 1 because we have that one other attachment. We make sure that the handle is not invalid. Interesting. So scene attachments has a invalid hierarchy handle. Wait a minute. That doesn't make... Wait. Oh, I'm nodding this, and it should be... There's the bug. So it should be if the handle is invalid, then we use it. Otherwise, we push a new one. That's the entire problem. So, 1394. One character. Finally able to catch me live. Awesome. It's 4 a.m. there. Jeez, that is pretty late. Well, I'm glad you're here, though. Good to see you. We are not necessarily doing anything super, super crazy. We're mainly just trying to get our new systems to work, right? So this is a reality of developing something like this, is you commonly just run into problems like this, right? So I'm just going to skip this stuff for now and see what we get. Really? It's still... Huh, okay. So let's do this again and see where we're foobarring this time. So I'm going to skip past the first node and go into the second one. And I'm actually going to move my breakpoint down a little bit because I know... I think it was here that we had some questions as to what was going on. So... So we're in the same state that we were in before. Let's just take a look at our data over here. So our scene meshes, we have the Sponza in slot 0, the tree in slot 1. The mesh attachment indices is 0 and 1 respectively. So let's actually just shorten this up to 2. And then... let's also do S mesh attachments. Right, so the mesh attachment at sub 0 is unknown. So the hierarchy node handle and resource handle are both index 0, which I would expect on that one. And then index 1 hasn't been set. Mesh attachments. So, scene attachment acquire. Let me think. What was the purpose? I think I see where some of the confusion is coming from. So we have I'm trying to think, why did I have a separate attachments array from mesh attachments and like every other type of attachment? Why did I have... System lookups for xforms and hierarchy. But if I have mesh attachments and terrain attachments, which way should I go? I could make everything just be in this single flat attachments array. But I feel like that's just asking for memory fragmentation, right? Because then we have to query the attachment type versus these are already sort of known what type they are. So we could just process them individually. So maybe I get rid of this attachments array altogether. Maybe that's what I need to do, because I think I'm getting confused and trying to maintain both. So let's get rid of that. Oh. I even left myself a note here. Each resource, terrains, meshes, skybox, etc. has a list of accompanying attachment indices which look up into the attachments array. This array is then used to look up into the hierarchy graph, which provides an xform, so each type can be iterated along with the attachment indices in a cache-friendly way. Yeah, so that is consistent with exactly what I was just thinking. So we don't need the attachments array, which means that everywhere in here that we are using it basically should not be. And that also, I think, means that I can do away with this scene attachment acquire because we've already stored this stuff off at this point. So I'm going to nuke that completely. Get rid of it from up here as well. The release as well. Right? We'll get rid of that. And then get rid of that. Get rid of that. That's not doing anything anyway. Okay. So we have the mesh attachment. This should be don't we have... I'm thinking we could manage these all at the same time. So instead of having to do scene attachment or acquire, we literally just do S mesh attachments, sub I. I could either set it there or push it later. Yeah, I think that's fine. So I'll do a resource handle. How do I want to do this actually? Let's do handle create, and we'll do index. And then s mesh attachments sub I attachment type equals scene node attachment type static mesh, right? And then s mesh attachments sub I hierarchy node handle equals what did we say that was? Node handle. Right? So we can actually we could do that. And then here, we can do scene attachment, mesh attachment, yeah, right, and then we can do mesh attachment, right, and then darray push s mesh attachments mesh attachment, and then I can completely nuke this bit. I know I've got some repeated stuff in here that we could probably clean that up, but I just want to see if that works. Have you ever used clock on the project? Not in a while. You know how many lines of code it has right now? I ran one in like November or December, and it was at 69,000 lines. And so I kind of don't want to run it again because 69,000 is a great number. But yeah, you know, we've done a few months of development on top of that. So just to give you an idea. Okay. Ooh. This is going to break all the other types, isn't it? Crap. It is. So we really need to come up with a less repetitious version of this. Right? Because we do, in this case, we push onto the array. In this case, we set one that's already in there because it's a free slot. We basically have to do something very similar for the other types. I think the only one that's actually broken right now... Nope, they're all broken. Yeah, see, they're all doing the same thing. Okay. So I think it might be time to make this a little bit more generic, right? So if we think about this, we're using essentially the same data sources in both cases, right? We're setting an attachment type, we're setting a node handle, we're setting a resource handle. that ultimately gets pushed into the mesh attachment indices, or one of the arrays, right? And then those things are also based off of index. And we also push something into one of the actual resource arrays, like the meshes or something like that. So if we go to make this a little bit more generic, I think what we do here is, at least for, we could probably do this entire block in a more generic way. So let's do this. Let's keep this over here on the right side, right, as our sort of source. I'm going to take this section, go over here to the left, and go all the way down to the bottom, maybe above this commented crap here. And we're going to just create a static function here. Return type void. And it's going to do, let's see. How do we want to do? The only thing that's going to get weird is the meshes array, because that's going to vary, right? But the attachment bit we can make generic. But that either becomes a set in the array or a push as well. So technically speaking, if we just push some rubbish into the D array, right, for the mesh attachment, we could then obtain a pointer to it and update it the same way as we do this. And it would essentially accomplish the same thing. So either way, we can obtain a pointer and update the pointer. So I guess what we really need to do is let's do we want to, what do we want to call this? Initialize attachment. I guess that works for now. We can always rename it. We need a scene. And then we also need we need to take in the array of the thing. So meshes, terrains, something along those lines. So I guess now we can say let's do a void double pointer, and we're going to say resource array. Right, so we're going to take a pointer to an array. And then we'll do another void pointer. Resource. That might be it. The only problem is going to be we have bits like this to check. Where's terrain? Terrain also has a state, right? That's kind of similar. Skybox also has a state. But like directional light doesn't have a state, right? It goes by generation. So how do we then I don't know if we could make that generic enough. I think I'm overthinking it, to be completely honest. I mean, I could pass a function pointer, right? That's like a resolver for it. You know what? I think I'm spending too much time on this and it doesn't really matter. I will mark this as a to-do and handle it later. I think what I'm going to do now is just essentially copy the same logic over and over again, which kind of sucks, but let's see. Yeah, it is a perfect number. Absolutely. Based on what you've seen, need to run a copy pasta analyzer as well. Yeah. I hate crap like this, right? Like, I did this just to kind of get it running, but I'm like, I really hate this kind of copy pasta shit. Like, I don't like it. Yeah, sometimes it's so hard to be able to do just that. I'm wasting too much time on this. Let me move on. Yeah, exactly. The only problem is it's like error prone to do that, right? Which is kind of, I hate it, but I don't have a choice at the moment. I don't think. So I guess I'll just use the mesh as sort of the template, right? So here's the found a slot use it bit. So actually, it really just comes after this. So this is going to be terrain attachments. And then this is going to be terrain. And then, this is terrain attachment indices. Right, and then we push the terrain. Then we do the index equals count. Then we take all of this poop, put it here. So this is going to be terrain attachment indices. Oops. Terrain attachments. Terrain. Okay. All right. So we have that, and then this whole section can go bye-bye. And then Skybox essentially gets the same treatment. So this is going to be Skybox attachments, which we don't have yet. That's awesome. Attachment type Skybox. And then Skybox attachment indices. Okay, I'm going to leave that error there so I remember to create that later. And then we get that added there. Skybox attachment indices. We have ads. So I'm just going to finish this block while we're waiting on ads. Right. All right, so we got about a minute left on ads, and then we'll continue. Do just want to say you're doing what you're doing is unprecedented in the field. You're a legend, and people appreciate your solidarity pursuit behind beyond what can be said. Keep it up. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much. Have you ever watched John Gienset's streams? I can't say I'm familiar, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I will copy that name and have a look. Because I'm sure if you're suggesting it, there's a reason behind it. So I will, let's see. What does he do? Oh, he's a Rust guy. Okay. Well, that's probably why I haven't watched him, because I'm not really a Rust guy. I am Rusty, but that's different. Really enjoy that I do a break for ads. Yeah, I just feel it levels the playing field, right? So that way you guys don't miss any content on either side. I just like to do that, and I put a timer up on the screen so you guys know when I'm going to come back, and it's usually a good opportunity to go ahead and hydrate too, right? Okay. So I'm going to nuke this. Okay, so we know about the skybox attachments. We know we have to create that. The directional light's going to be a little bit different because it doesn't have anything to load. But it does have a generation that we can go off of. So from that perspective, that portion of it is going to be roughly the same. So directional light attachments, and again, that array is not going to exist. It's fine. We'll create it here in a minute. And then we'll do directional light attachment indices and change the attachment type to directional light. All right, so that's that one. And then once again, this gets the same attachment treatment down here. So directional light attachment indices. Spiro with a raid of 72 viewers. What's going on, buddy? Thank you for the raid. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What did you get up to on your stream? Big shout out, by the way, to Spiro. Spiro is a Zig madman who is doing all kinds of really, really cool stuff. He's actually building a game engine using Zig as his... there we go. There's the shout out. He's using Zig as his actual game engine, but as his rendering front end, he's using the DOM in the browser. And so he's basically building straight to WASM and using that to hold his game state. And then he's using the DOM as his front end renderer. Like I said, madman, but it's awesome. So yeah, if you're not following Spiro, absolutely go give him a follow for sure. Level editing mostly works. Kraken is back to working. Animations are working. Yeah, so that's the other thing that he's working on right now is he's actually got his game works with Twitch integration so that you can like enter commands in chat and move your little your ship around the screen and attack each other and attack the Kraken, and Do you still have the raid mechanic in there where you, however many viewers the person has, is how much health the Kraken spawns with? And then everybody has to team up and kill it. It's really, really cool. You're going to bring it back. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was still there or not. Okay. Yeah, it's just super, super cool stuff. So, really quickly, for all of you who are new, what we're working on here is called the Kohi engine. I'll drop a link into chat so that you guys have that. And what that links to is the main website, which is the portal that contains all the information about the project I'm working on. So this is a series where we're building a game engine from scratch using C and Vulkan as our initial rendering backend. And I say initial rendering backend because we are going to support other APIs such as Direct3D and Metal as well. It is cross-platform compatible, so it runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. I'm on Windows at the moment. I will probably be switching to Linux on the next stream, I'm thinking. It started off as a YouTube tutorial series, and now we stream development of it live on Twitch. And I should mention also that it is 100% free and open source, so it is available on GitHub. So if you look here on the website, first off, there's me down there at the bottom streaming, waving to myself. And then if we look up here, we've got links to YouTube and Twitch, the Discord server, which has got about 900 people on it or so. We have a link to the GitHub repo. And if we take a look at that, all of the source is available here. We do have feature branches that we work in, and eventually that'll make its way into main. But the important thing to note here is that it is Apache 2.0 licensed, which means if you want to use it for commercial or independent or whatever, just as a hobby, the only thing that I ask is that you literally say you used Kohi. That's it. There's no sort of licensing fees. There's no sort of royalties. There won't be any of that stuff ever. None of it will ever be paywall. It'll always be 100% free. Same goes for the content on my YouTube channel as well as Twitch. This is designed to be an educational exercise on a way to build a game engine from scratch. It's not the only way to do it. It's not even necessarily always the correct way to do it because we're always trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And so it just kind of goes through that whole process of developing a game engine from scratch. So I hope that makes sense. All right. With that said, what we are working on right now is we are currently revamping the way our scene works. So we've introduced a concept of xforms, which is sort of a refactoring of our transform system. And then we also introduced a transform hierarchy. So the transform and the hierarchy are separate. So transforms know nothing about what their parented or childhood relationships are. They only know about themselves. The hierarchy exists in a separate graph that exists in the scene itself. And so the other thing that we did was, if we take a look at this, we have developed a custom file format. I think that's actually that's the wrong example. 1 second. I need this one. So we developed a custom file format for us to essentially declare our scenes in. And this looks very much like JSON, but it's actually called KSON for Kohi script object notation. And so it's got a little bit of different rules. It supports like in-block comments and comments at the end of the line. We don't have to put commas in between fields, things like that. And so we actually wrote a parser that is capable of parsing this, tokenizing it, and then turning it into a tree. And so what this allows us to have is a node architecture, right? So we can have these nodes that exist in a scene. The nodes can have children, can have attachments. So the nodes themselves do not necessarily have a transform by default because not every node needs a transform. Perfect example of that is this node right here. So this one has a name called environment, and then it's got a few attachments. The attachments are the things that typically get rendered or are represented within the world. So for example, a skybox does not need a transform. A directional light does not need a transform, right? So these are a couple of things that are in this node that does not have a transform. If we go down a little bit further, we have this sponza object, which does have a static mesh attachment. And then it also has children, right? So in this case, it has a single child that is a tree mesh, which has an attachment of a static mesh that is called tree. It has an X form of its own, which is right there, right? The sponza attachment itself has an X form, which is right there, right? So its position is here, right? Scale, rotation rather, is here, quaternion rotation, right? And then scale is here, right? And then we just have another static mesh down here, and a terrain, right? Each with their own X forms. So the idea between separating X forms and hierarchy is because you can have a hierarchy of objects. You can have something like this guy here. So you can essentially use this as a folder when we have tree views in our editor, without having to have it have a useless transform that's not actually doing anything, but is taking up resources in calculation, right? And CPU speed. So we separated out those two, and we are in the process now of implementing this in our scene. And that is what we are stepping through now. And we're basically creating all of the attachments that we need during our scene initialization so that they can be pulled up and rendered later. So we're a decent amount of the way through. There is some stuff in here that I do have to clean up. So right now we're just kind of getting this working. So some of the code's a little bit dirty, some of it's a little bit repetitive, and then once we get it working, we'll go ahead and clean it up and speed things up. So I hope all of that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, this is an interactive stream, so I do like chatting back and forth with you guys. And you know, if you have any questions, I will answer them to the best of my ability. Kohi scene object notation. Yeah, it's kind of Kohi scene object notation, Kohi script object notation. It's it could kind of be either. What's the difference between an X form and a transform? So we did have a transform system in here that did have the ability to set parent transforms, and transforms are essentially the old version of that, right? So we're basically transitioning everything over to use the new xform system, which is our essentially data-oriented system that's a lot more cache friendly. And we're essentially just kind of converting everything over to use that, and then we'll remove the old transform system, and then we're going to rename the new system from xform to transform. So that's basically what that is, just to avoid collisions in the meantime while we're converting stuff. All right. So what we're doing is we are in the process now of setting up all of our attachments for our different object types. So we've already done meshes, skybox, terrain. I'm in the middle of doing directional light now. Actually, I think I just finished that one up. Not quite. So I just need to change this, right? So we're creating a new attachment here. Let's rename that. We'll do directional light attachment. All right, and we'll just need to change this to directional lights. And then this is going to be directional light attachments. And then this goes away. Doglock, how's it going? Good to see you. Lurking while you eat. Looking good? Awesome. Yeah, we're coming along, right? We're making decent progress anyways. All right, so do we really only have, I guess point lights are the only ones that are left. So I'm just going to take this. And like I said, there's a lot of repetitive stuff in here. This is not normally the way I'm going to leave it. But for right now, while we're kind of still standing this stuff up, this is what I need to do just to kind of get it working. And the reason this is all repetitive is because these requirements here that it's checking, like generation versus load status for things that actually have to be loaded, are a little bit different. So we have to kind of handle those things a little bit different. So we'll do point light attachments. All right, point light attachment indices. This is a point light. And then we also need to come up here and grab this. And come down here. So we're going to do point light attachment indices. This is going to be point light attachments. We want point light here. And we'll just rename this to point. Why did you do that whole thing? Point light attachment. There we go. All right. So we do that. We get rid of this. We're just kind of getting rid of old logic out of here. So we need point light attachments array. We need a directional light attachments array. And skybox attachments. Okay, so let's go ahead and add those in. Clear highlights. All right, so scene attachment, point light attachments, scene attachment, directional light attachments, and what was the other one I needed? Skybox attachments. Scene attachment, skybox attachments. If I can spell it right. All right. So what we'll do, I know right here is where we create those arrays. Let's see, so mesh attachments, mesh attachment indices. Okay, let's move this. Oops. Let's move this down here. And I want outscene skybox attachments equals the array creates skybox attachment. Why is that bleating? Do we not have a skybox attachment? Oh, it's scene attachment, that's why. Derp. Okay. So let's do the same thing for let's do directional light attachments. directional light attachment indices, and then point light attachments, and point light attachment indices. I don't think I was setting those up anywhere else. Does not look like it. Okay. All right, so we have all those set up. Is there anything else I've forgotten here? I don't think so. Let's build. I'm not thinking this is going to work yet because I'm sure there's something else I forgot. So the thing I should point out is we basically pulled apart the way scenes work, and we implemented our parser at the same time, which probably wasn't the greatest of ideas. We have the parser working, and now I'm just fixing the scene aspect of it. Giuseppe, I hope that's how you pronounce it. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome. Okay. So let's run this. All right, and we'll load a scene. Oh, that's a good sign. All right, Sponza at least loaded correctly. Now, obviously, we're not loading our skybox. We don't have our correct irradiance map, so the lighting is a little bit weird on this because we just don't have that stuff included in the scene at the moment. So before we were crashing, but now it seems to be loading fine, but... Oh, there's the tree. Okay, so that's... we do have the tree, at least. That is loading as a child, but... It doesn't look like it used the transform correctly. Let's see if it parented correctly, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change to rotation mode, right? Our gizmo is kind of small, but I should be able to... It doesn't look like it's... Oh, you know what? Because my gizmo isn't actually wired to the xform. Womp womp. My gizmo is still hooked to the transform, so it's not going to work. Dang it. That was going to be a quick, easy test. All right. Let me see if I can fix that really fast. So we'll go into the application. And I'll look where the editor gizmo is used. Have an interaction begin. Let's see. So that's not it. I want the selection. Here we go. Okay. So this is a little bit misleading here because I have a transform that's also called xform. Because this is when I was like starting to... Yeah, and I even actually put a to-do in here that it's broken. Well... Should I try and fix this now? So we have state selection. So our selected object just takes a pointer to a transform. So I guess what I would need to do here is to take in a K handle, and we're going to call this xform handle. So the other thing that we did recently too, that we're just kind of working the kinks out of, is instead of taking pointers to things like we were with that transform, we're now taking handles to things. And so a handle is basically a index into a resource table that varies by what kind of resource you have selected. And then it also has a unique identifier to ensure that whatever the handle is actually not a stale index. So if you release a handle and then you use that same index for something else, you should generate a new ID for it. And anything else that has that handle saved off as using it should do a comparison against that identifier. And if it's stale, it should be able to handle that. Supe, how's it going? How goes Kaysen? Kaysen's done, actually. Yeah, we have it working. So that is all done and sorted, thankfully. All we need to do now is we're just basically fixing all the issues in our scene. Yeah, and that's more or less it, right? And so what I'm dealing with right now is object selection. But I'm thinking this might be a little bit more involved than I can handle in this stream in like 3 minutes. So, I think what I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to undo what is that in game state? Already at oldest change. That's rubbish. I think I'm going to undo that one change. That way, at least it's not broken and it runs for now. And then we're going to actually tackle this on the next stream. So I think our parenting is mostly correct. I have some questions about whether the actual transform is being taken into account properly. But in order to move on from that, why is this? Okay, just IntelliSense hadn't updated. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and check this in. So this is all the files that we changed on this stream. So add scene attachment, seemingly working. Need to revisit object selection. All right. All right, so that code is available on the refactor xforms scene branch on GitHub if you guys are interested in seeing that. With that said, this is usually the time I end because I do have to get up in the morning, but I would ask for all of you folks that are new, if you're interested in this project and want to support me in any way, shape, or form, I would ask that you follow, if that's possible. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps me out a lot. I'm trying to grow the channel, so every follow definitely helps me out there. All right, so let me choose. I think we're going to get hit by ads before I can actually raid, because I don't think I was quick enough with the bat it away button. So I'm going to hold off on raiding until we have our ad break, and then I'll raid after that. It's going to be like in a minute, I think. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here, both on the Twitch side and the YouTube side. Actually, let me catch up on YouTube comments really quickly. You have transform handlers in the scene. Yeah, there's ads right there. I knew it was coming. Have transform handlers in the scene. I had no idea. That's amazing. You got more than I dared to think. Yeah, exactly. We made some pretty good progress. Bad comic. You rewrote your game engine and you're using OpenGL. Okay, that works. Did you switch from something else instead of OpenGL? So for those of you who can still hear me, we'd like to break on ads whenever those come up, just so that you guys don't miss any content, right? All right, we're almost done with ads. Well, we got about 40 seconds left. I was going to raid Spiro, but he raided me first. He beat me to the punch. All right, let's see. Just going to pick somebody to raid really quickly. I think I know who I'm going to do, actually. Yeah, okay. I know who I'm going to raid. All right, ads are done. All right, cool. So that is where we're going to leave the stream for tonight. Thank you guys again for being here. If you haven't already, follow me on the YouTube or Twitch side. I appreciate the follows. And I'll drop a link also to my socials so that you guys have those if you're interested. Yeah, let's see. Spiro, your family's going to bed, and I don't think people want to watch a silent stream, so you rated you. Yeah, that's fair. I have to go to bed too because I have to work in the morning. Show a game that it was made using Kohi. There isn't one yet because Kohi is still being made. We haven't used it to make a game yet. That's coming soon though. So we're still very much in the trenches of early game engine development. You know, these things take a while to make. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and I'm going to raid. If I can spell it. I'm going to raid Alveus Sanctuary, who is a non-profit animal rescue. And I think it's a pretty good cause, right? They've actually got a bunch of different types of animals there. They've got cameras up. And the ad revenue definitely helps them out. So that is who we're going to raid tonight. And yeah, I thank you guys for being here. Thank you for raiding them and supporting their channel. And I will catch you guys on the next one. So see you guys.